Hey gardeners, Amy here with Garden Up. Today I want to talk about roses. Specifically, I want to talk about the difference between grafted roses and own root roses. So if you go to a department store or a nursery and you're looking for a rose, what they're probably going to show you is a grafted rose. And what that is you have a hybrid tea or a floribunda or some kind of fancy, pretty top, but it might not have the strongest root system, or maybe that was the rumor. I'm not actually sure what they are. But they take the tops of the roses and they kind of Frankenstein them onto a strong rootstock. And the thinking there is that the roots are going to be stronger, so it should make a healthier plant. It shouldn't die in the winter. So if you were in Spokane last year, we all remember winter of 2022, we had this gorgeous, warm, late fall right up until winter arrived on November 3rd. Suddenly and cold. And the problem was all the plants, they had not hardened off yet. There was no time to acclimate. They weren't ready for winter. So a lot of them were still actively growing. And so the plants that still had juices flowing when that hard freeze came, those branches died because the juices froze right inside their own branches. A lot of the branches split, there was a lot of damage, and like I said, many of them just died. And so for a lot of grafted roses, everything that was exposed died. So if your graft was still out in the open, pretty much the whole top died. And what you got back was this stuff. This lovely whippy cane. This is called Dr. Huey, and that is what most grafted roses are grafted onto. That is the rootstock that they usually use. And you get these long, whippy, wiry canes. It'll bloom a dark red rose. It's really pretty, but it only lasts for about 2 weeks, sometime mid-June. And then after that, it's just these. These are super prone to mildew. This is a full sun plant that never gets water on it. It's still covered in mildew. And there's not really a reason to have Dr. Huey in your yard. So I'm gonna go ahead and dig these out, and I have purchased a couple of replacements. So I went out to the rosarium and I bought a couple of nice, this has got a little bit of frost damage on the leaves, but you know, just ignore that. It's getting towards the end of the season. I got a couple of nice own root roses. And what that means is they took the rose, it still has its roots, and even if the whole top dies, it's going to come back from its own roots. As long as the roots themselves don't die, which really doesn't happen that often, this rose will come back true to form every year. So first I have to dig this out, which this is going to be an adventure, and let me show you why. So the thing about roses, they have a very, very deep taproot. What you're going to need to dig out a rose is a shovel, probably a bucket in my case because I don't have a lot of room to put dirt, and most likely your hand pruners. So I'm just going to cut these all down so that I can get to the rose and see what I'm doing. You might need loppers if it's a bigger rose, but if it's all reverted Dr. Huey stuff, you're not going to need loppers. They're too skinny for that. So how I remove a plant when I'm by myself is I just start to get this soil out from underneath it. Get as much out of there as I can. Okay, now, so what I have done is excavated most of the roots, but there's one holding on, and that is the taproot, which if I want the rose gone forever, I've got to get the taproot going straight down right next to it. So these down here are the taproots. Actually got a little bit of girdling going on here. One in particular right here, that's the one that's going straight down. Oh. Well, alrighty, that was easier than I expected. So that's what you can expect when you're digging up a rose. Sometimes what you'll want to do is, if you can't get the whole taproot, what I like to do is I take a box, just a regular little cardboard box, and I sink it into the ground over top of where the root is, so that when that existing root that's still there sprouts, the sprouts get caught in the box and it never, it can't escape. That way you don't get a whole bunch of little volunteer shoots in the next year or two. A lot of these roots have the potential to grow again if they have any meristem, it's called meristematic tissue. If they have any in there, then they could sprout and grow again. So I'm just going to dig around a little more just to make sure that I've got it all out, because I don't need any more Dr. Huey starts. So a lot of this is scuffing from the shovel, but you can see a couple of these little bumps, like this one right here, possibly these right in here. Those are potential nodes that could grow more roots, or it could turn into a shoot if the plant decides that's what it needs. And if this is all that's left in the ground, it's going to eventually decide that it wants some upward growth. So this would have come back and sprouted another Dr. Huey rose. Alright, so I've got my old rose dug out. I've sifted around in here to try to find any remaining roots from the original Dr. Huey rootstock. Pulled them out. I don't think I'm going to need to do any further mitigation. I think I've got it all. So I've already got a hole ready to go, and I'm going to plant my new rose right on top of where the old one was. So I'm going to do a full root wash so you can really see what's going on here. So whenever you're planting a perennial, especially a woody perennial, it's a good idea to do a root wash. Get all of the potting medium off of the roots, pull it apart so you can really see what's going on in here. Check for any girdling or crossing or damaged roots, and you can remove anything that looks potentially problematic. In this case, it's pretty much all fibrous roots. There is one tap right here, and it is more or less growing down. It's kind of a zigzaggy line, but it's going downward. So that looks pretty healthy. I'm just going to put this in the ground just like it is, and I'm going to have a very healthy rose long term. Now I also want to put the native soil into this hole. I do not want to amend with anything fancy. And the reason for that is if I have this nice bowl of delicious compost and super rich potting soil and perlite and all this stuff, the roots are not going to be reaching out in search of nutrients. They're going to stay in this little hole, because why would they ever leave it? So by putting the native soil back in the hole, you're actually going to create a healthier plant in the long run, because you're forcing the roots to get bigger and searching for nutrients and water. And that's going to make it much stronger long term. So in this case, since I washed it in there and I've got all that perlite, I am going to go ahead and leave it, but I'm going to mix it in. Where'd all this come from? You all saw this, right? It all came out of that hole. Have you ever heard of there's got to be a term for this, where you dig a hole and you have no idea either how you got so much extra soil or why you need so much extra soil to fill the hole back in? It's different each time. That hole is full and it's level, and I still have all this left. As with any perennial, you want to make sure you're planting with lots of water. So this is from the Rosarium, which is south of Spokane. This is a Neptune rose which is one of my favorite roses. It has a beautiful purple, like light lavender flower on it, and the smell is phenomenal. And when you take an own root rose out of the pot, it's just like any other perennial. This is a little dry because the sky has been the only water I've put on these for a few days. But I'm gonna just scuff up the roots just a little bit. I could even, you know what, I think I will. I'm gonna root wash this. We're gonna do a full root wash to have a look at what these roots look like. So yeah, that's most of it. There's no graft here. What they did was they took a stem section of an existing rose and they put it probably in a rooting medium and then put that in water. And that stem has its own roots. So that's how they clone these own root roses. But that's a good, healthy cluster of roots right there. I can see pretty much all the roots. There's still a few fibrous ones that are all mixed in with the potting medium, but there's no girdling roots. There's no graft to worry about. It's all just a whole bunch of roots. I'm gonna put this straight in the ground. You can go a little deep on these, deeper than a normal perennial. It'll just stimulate more root growth. I'm not a huge fan of doing that, but I also really want to protect my new rose. I go just a little bit deeper than normal. Now I'm not pushing down on the soil. That's the thing we don't do anymore. I'm not trying to compact the soil around the plant. I just want to pat it all into place and that's it. There's a little moat, so it's going to catch water. I'm going to take the tag and put it right. And now I'm going to water it in. And wash my hands. There we go. Done. Woohoo! Thanks for watching this video, everybody. If you liked it or you learned something new, make sure to tell me by hitting the like button. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. And if you haven't already, please remember to subscribe so you get more gardening content like this in your sub box almost every week. Thanks again for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the garden.